Welcome to Bridge to Self, where we spotlight the stories of second and 1.5 generation Black Americans. I'm your host, Ben Arthur. So I'm solo again this week, and I wanted to take a few minutes to discuss cultural assimilation from my perspective as a second gen Black kid. So growing up, like going to being in a predominantly white environment, heavy dosage of Asians as well, but just being in the suburbs of Seattle, going to schools, the kinds of schools I went to, I was very conscious of my blackness, how I acted, what I looked like, how I was perceived, how I was being perceived as a Black American specifically. Like pretty much every single class I took from the time I was 5 to 17, 18 years old, I'd say 99% of the time, I was the only Black kid in the class. And then also, I was an athlete, played basketball, did a little bit of track in high school too. So it's almost like I fit that stereotype as well. And so I felt very much Black American in these environments I navigated outside of the home. But at home, I felt very much Ghanaian in many respects. It was just in the way my parents would speak to each other. A lot of times it was Fanti they were speaking. That's one of the dialects in Ghana. It was the food we ate. It was the music we listened to. It was the garb we wore. Many times it was functions, parties, gatherings that we went to where it was very much Ghanaian. And so that was my life, right? Straddling two different worlds. And I think looking back, like there was never an environment where I felt both of those at the same time. To be honest, it was either like you're Black or you're Ghanaian, you're African. And so I bring all that to kind of tie that into cultural assimilation, just in that it almost completely defines, in my perspective, the second gen Black experience. And look, it defines the experience of a lot of Americans, right? This is a melting pot of cultures that we have in the US. But when you're a second gen Black American, it is so tied to your reality that it's to a point to where you're never identifying as something that is 100% you, right? You're either in an environment and you're looking at yourself as Black in America, or you're looking at yourself as African or Caribbean or whatever you are. And that kind of brings me to like how I've struggled sometimes when I'm doing research for these solo episodes I do, or even just to provide context for some of these interviews I do, just in terms of having background, is just that there is so little information out there about the second gen Black American experience. Like if you look it up, like you'll get the little AI summary, you'll get a few stories here and there, a few, maybe a couple scholarly articles, but there is like considering like we all look up like a wide variety of topics, and there are hundreds and hundreds of pages, billions, maybe even trillions of data points in regards to maybe what you're looking at. But with the second gen Black experience, there is so little out there. Almost, it's so there's so little data out there on that experience. Like you'll get a lot on the immigrant or even the Black immigrant experience, so you'll get a lot on the Black in America experience, but you'll never get to a high level of depth about kind of being in between. And I think just the way I look at it, I think a part of it is because so many of us end up just our realities are tied to kind of being one or the other, right? Like I think depending on your context growing up, your environment growing up, your circumstances, you're always either one or the other, never both at the same time. And even specifically talking about like the environment piece of it, right? Like I think for a lot of second gen Black kids like me who end up growing in an environment where they don't see a lot of people who look like them. Like you're in a predominantly white environment, you're just kind of Black, right? And even I think if you're a second gen Black kid, but you grow up in a largely Black American environment, that's also a situation where I think you for a lot of the time you end up looking at yourself as like Black and really identifying with kind of Black American causes. But then I know a lot of people who maybe were born in on the African continent or in the Caribbean, came to the US after a few years, and while growing up in the States, they were still surrounded by so much of their culture, right? Like I think the Nigerians are a one group I think about a lot. Like you can be born in Nigeria, come to the US, and still have such a large Nigerian community wherever you're at, to where you identify so fully with being Nigerian and not necessarily looking at yourself as kind of Black American. And so that's kind of what I noticed, right? It's never both. And I think that's why identity, I should say, is so hard to kind of drill down for second gen kids. And I think the way it's set up, you can either think really deeply about it like me, or because of the environment you're in, either looking at yourself as just African or looking at yourself as just kind of Black, you can like not really think super deeply about your identity. And so I think that's why that kind of maybe in a lot of ways sums up the complexities and nuances of the second gen Black American experience, because you're either one or the other. A lot of times the environment you're in can dictate whether you're one or the other. You never really have reinforcement about or live in a reality to where you can just look at like second gen experience. And so I think that's a big reason why I've started this platform. It's so hard to root a second gen Black target audience, because people are diverse in general, right? In just their viewpoints, their perspectives in life and whatnot. But I think it's super, super unique when you're second generation and Black, because you have so many different realities you're navigating. Black in America, immigrant background, Black immigrant background, and then depending on the environment you're in, whether via home or just in the group of people you hang around, the schools you go to, the environment, the cities you live in, the states you reside, the way you look at your reality is so diverse that it's almost kind of hard to root down a singular show that like speaks to everyone, right? And I think that's what I'm trying to do. But I'm having a lot of fun doing it. It's given me an outlet to kind of discuss like my experiences and how I just struggled with like identity and belonging and community growing up, just dealing with all of those blended touch points. And I hope over time this community grows, and I thank all of you who have been here. But I think it's just something I've thought about a lot. Long story short, I think I'm trying to create a show, a platform that speaks to the wide tapestry of that second gen experience. Like even if you maybe don't maybe if you think super consciously about that, like me, just being between worlds, or you don't really think about it much at all because you feel super African or Caribbean, or you feel super Black American, I hope this show can get to a point where it speaks to everyone. So yeah, just wanted to get that off my chest. I hope that came off in a concise manner, but those are just some of the thoughts going through my head at the moment. I'll be going back to some of the interviews starting the next episode, so look out for that. But you guys know the deal. Every other Wednesday at 5 p.m. Central Time is when new episodes come out. It's at Bridge to Self across platforms. On YouTube, Instagram are the two platforms I'm most active on, so be sure to check that out. But also Apple Podcasts and Spotify to listen to the audio version of the show. Be sure to rate, subscribe, leave a review. Always, always, always working to improve the show and to hear what you guys have to think. And this is a show for you all. As much as this is something that speaks really deeply in my heart, if you're listening to this, I imagine that it does to you as well. So I want to make sure that this can be the best product possible. So, but that's it, guys. Until next time, I'll see you guys soon. All right, peace out.